I had fun, man. Just out, the guys joking. We working at the same time. Putting the work in as a team. Like I said, I'm just glad to be with the guys.
My favorite night of the week.
We're gonna go out there and we're playing to win. We're not out here just to show up. We're out here to win.
I don't want guys that want to win, because really, who doesn't? Nobody wants to win. Everybody wants to win. I want players that hate to lose.
Well, this embodies everything that we are as a team, as an organization. Our motto is keep pounding. That's what we do. You know what I'm saying?
All right, what's up, Panther fans? It's your boy, the Professor, a.k.a. Tony Dunn, the C3 Podcast, brought to you by CarolinaCatChronicles.com. I need the chat room to give me a shout-out and to make sure that this audio is rocking and rolling just okay. I hope we're getting that going. Guys, tonight's episode is Rostering Up, episode 18.6, where we're going to talk about the Panthers and some new acquisitions, some new signings, and some various things like that. So we made some big signings. We're also going to be talking about how this is setting up the draft and potentially rounding out that roster. So good. The chat room is verified. The sound is working. And I'm here tonight with Mel Mayock, who has become a regular on his own podcast.
Right on, man. What's going on, Tony? It's Tuesday night, man. We're down a team member, but that's all right. We're just going to have to let Joey get hydrated and get rested up. Hopefully be back next week, but we'll have to carry the load tonight. But, hey, let me just say real quick, man, we got a lot of people out in the YouTube chat room. These guys they're not what we call fans. They're what we call family, Panthers family. And one of our Panther family members, Legacy Lines, Lynn, just want to give her a shout-out. She had a kind of a rough milestone this week, but want to let her know that we're thinking about her and we got her back. So, Lynn, hang in there, baby. Hope you're doing all right.
And this is where being a fan of the Carolina Panthers becomes kind of an asset in moments like this, where you give those kinds of friend-to-friend tip of the caps, because you can keep on saying, keep on pounding, right?
Keep pounding. That's it.
So, look, we appreciate every single person here on the show with us. Tonight, you can find all the latest Panthers news and opinions at CarolinaCatChronicles.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @cat_chronicles. We encourage you right now to smash that thumbs up button if you're on Facebook, if you are on YouTube, and please hit the subscribe button. We're pushing to get to that 1,000 mark by
getting close.
By the draft. And you know what? This is what we do every Tuesday night. We hang out and we talk about the Carolina Panthers with you guys. Mel, let's jump into the show and just quickly, Da'Norris, or first, should I say, not quickly. We never do anything quickly. First is the signing of Da'Norris Searcy. I told you. That was the guy. I might be 2 years early to the party. Yeah.
Right.
I did say it a couple of weeks ago that this was a guy that I would want to go look at. The Panthers, they listened to the show and they did that. We went and got Da'Norris Searcy, who is a strong safety who made his bones in Buffalo, some Buffalo bones, and then he went to Tennessee, signed a $24 million contract, and within a year really kind of found himself in a supportive role in Tennessee, because they went out and got, who's that dude from Jacksonville, Jonathan Cyprien, and they signed Da'Norris Searcy for a year. And they went 3-13, and everything was terrible in Tennessee. They thought they were going to be better in a trash division, and they were at the trashiest of the trash. And Da'Norris Searcy was a guy that found himself the odd man out, but he's back. Well, now he's in Carolina. I had wanted him 2 years ago when he left Buffalo, 2015. Instead, we went and got Kurt Coleman. But here we go. We've got another safety who has been discarded, overlooked, that the Panthers can find a second life in. Mel, let me know.
Well, there's some things I like about his game. I mean, the number one thing is he's been incredibly durable. He doesn't miss games, which is awesome. He played all 16 games last year, and he's dependable. He's a KG veteran. But I got to say, he can't be all of our eggs in one basket. We still have to draft some youth and some speed to back him up there and let him compete. He's a good KG vet, but he's not what I would call an elite safety. I mean, Walter Football had him ranked as the 21st best available safety in free agency. So he's not going to be what you call, elite caliber starter, but he does bring some. I mean, I equate him to like Harper was for us a few years ago. Good, solid. He's dependable. He's going to be where he's supposed to be. He's not going to make big mistakes like Williams did for the Saints last year as a rookie. But he's also not going to be the guy that takes over a game and wins it for you either.
Dude, this Searcy's 29 to answer J-Dub's question in the chat room. Guys, you don't need to ask if he can cover, fellas. He doesn't need to be the most athletic. This is our thumper. He's a thumper. He is. Now we have a strong safety. Look, we didn't have that in Mike Adams last year. Mike Adams played the strong safety. He's an old guy who had a good end to the season. But Searcy was brought in to replace Mike Adams, and he's not there to cover. He's there to get on some tight ends maybe at the most in coverage, and he's in there to lay some dudes out when they come across the middle and they get behind Luke Kuechly. And I'm fine with that. What we can do then is, like you said, I don't even think that your strong safety has to be your speediest guy. I know he doesn't have to be your speediest guy. You don't want him to be slow as dirt, obviously. But, if you want that rangy speed, you want that at free safety, a guy who can go out there and play center field. Maybe you go out in the draft and get that. And we also have to mention that Eric Reed is still out there. We'll talk a little bit more in that, but I don't think you need to. I think you need to think of Searcy as a guy who is not going to be like an elite caliber strong safety, but you don't need to build a defense around him. You're building a defense around Luke Kuechly, Starr, and now Poe. So I think this is a good move, but I've been on the Searcy train. Now, we also went out and we double-dipped that guard. I don't know the other guard's name, but I do know the bigger name was Jeremy Sirles. And this is a guy who, undrafted free agent, he was a Nebraska Cornhusker, played for 3 years in Minnesota under North Turner a little bit, and he has come to Carolina on a 1-year deal. They're excited about that. And Mel, he has talked about wanting to compete for a starting position. That's why he came here, because there was an opening with Norwell's departure. And at the same time that there was he just wanted a place where he could get an honest competition. So he's coming in here with a competitive spirit. How do you I think Jeremiah Sirles this is a great type of signing that you need to have at this time of year.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think it's a great signing. One, as you said, he's played under North Turner before, so he knows the offense and knows the terminology. He knows what North Turner wants him to do. Two, he's not just a left guard. He has played every position except left tackle along the line. So he has good depth, good versatility. And then three, he has played next to Matt Khalil before, so he knows tendencies of the left tackle that he's going to be playing next to, which is a kind of a head start on things. So, what Marty Herney really did here in this signing, as well as the Searcy signing, is you don't have to reach in rounds 1 or 2 if the value is not there at that position. You're setting yourself up for the draft to be able to take the best player available. So it was a great signing, in my opinion.
Yeah, is that you did see the flexibility. He played all up and down the line all 2 years ago. He came in against the Panthers, or maybe it was last year. Maybe it was last year he came in against the Panthers and had a good game against the Panthers. And he was playing at that point, I think, guard, had to move to a right tackle. He was subbing for Mike Remmers at one point. And it was Mike Remmers who encouraged him to go, who suggested Carolina would be a good place and a good opportunity for him. Kevin Ketchie has reminded me that we did re-sign Amini Silatulu, which I know it's easy to make fun of. And, he has gotten abused at some times. But the question, too, is, I don't think he can be one of those guys that doesn't make it out of camp. You're talking about a camp body that potentially you're familiar with in case these other things, if somebody gets injured. something to that effect. And then what you kept talking about over and over is that maybe he's too small to play guard. And I agree. There's nothing to be really excited with Amini Silatulu. But I think what we're seeing is that there's some things like you were mentioning about giving you that flexibility, padding out a roster and creating competition, I think is important. And now the Carolina Panthers, the last signing, they had a busy Friday of last week. Ross Cockrell, who is a former Charlotte Latin player as well as went to Duke University, cornerback who was formerly with the Giants and spent time with Pittsburgh as well. And there was one other team in there also. A lot of people have been getting excited about this kind of being an under the radar good signing here in the wake of Brashard Breeland. Ross Cockrell has been, I've seen a lot of those next gen stats saying he's good in zone coverage. His draft profile was that he's kind of a heady player more than he is just a dominant athlete, but he was a 3-sport athlete in college: track, basketball, and football. So he's not a slouch. He is pretty fast. I wouldn't sleep on him being able to stick in man coverage if he has to. Mel, how do you think I think this is a good signing for Hurney in the wake of Breeland and missing on that?
Oh, I think it was a great signing, and I loved him coming out of Duke back in the draft. When the 3rd round came around, I was screaming for the Panthers to take him, and it ended up going in the 5th round. So I've been high on the guy for a long time, and what I like about him, he's tall, he's rangy, he covers well, he gets his hands on the receivers too. So something I hated about Worley is, and I don't know if it was the coaching directive or his play. I think it was his play. Is he would sneak back off the line of scrimmage and wouldn't really get his hands up there. Bradbury will get up and put his hands on the receiver, and that's the same type of guy that Cockrell is. He's going to get up and let the receivers know they're going to have to work for their yards. So I think
it's kind of interesting. I went back and looked at his draft profile, and he's been in the league since like 2013 or 2014. But
it's been that long.
I went and looked at his draft profile, and one of the things they were talking about was that that was going to be a weak component of his game, was getting up and doing that. But so I went back and read that, and also that's 4 years ago, right? So you hear you say those types of things, and then I also heard Cockrell, when he was talking, he did a little short interview with the Carolina Panthers website, with Bill Voth, and he probably said, "I'm going to get my hands on you like 7 times in 40 seconds." So it's something that's a priority to him.
That's kind of like a date with the professor.
Yeah. And it's over. By the way, you're going to have to pay for dessert.
There you go.
All right. So I think that this is again, looking here is that you can be upset with any one of these names not being the name you wanted. But I think these are solid. I think these additions make us get better. And that is important, and especially when assessing what Marty Hurney has done, right?
And it sets up the draft perfectly. I mean, you don't have to go out there and say, "Oh, I've got to have a corner. I've got to have a safety. I've got to have a guard. Got to have a wide receiver."
I.e. Dave Gettleman 2 years in a row.
Right.
Dave Gettleman had to go in with a receiver the year we got Kelvin Benjamin, and he had to
get a corner. He had to get a corner that year. They went to Three Amigos.
Yeah. So I think that this does put you in a good position. We'll talk about that. Now, we're going to do the cat calls early in the show after this next topic. So we're going to try moving the cat calls up to see if that can continue to steer our conversation in the right way earlier. So those will be coming, guys. The cat calls line is where you, the fan, can have your voice heard on the C3 podcast. All you got to do is call the number 252-228-5098. Go ahead and plug that number in your phone, 252-228-5098. Whenever you're driving down the road or at a stoplight or yelling and screaming at Colin Cowherd on the radio, you can call us and vent about your Carolina Panthers. We're gonna move those calls up and feature them tonight. But the next thing I did want to talk about before that, Mel, was I feel these 3 signings were important to, like you said, preparing for the draft, rounding out a roster. And I think sometimes we look at free agency in a vacuum. We look at the draft in a vacuum. We look at training camp in a vacuum. But really, you have to, I think it's important to look at like the 2018 season holistically from a roster management perspective, and that you are building a roster that can weather training camp, a roster that can weather the a long season and get you ready for a draft. So I wanted to ask you, Mel, what are the main things that stick out to you about the philosophy or the keys that you feel like are important for that long view of roster development?
Well, obviously you want to find your stars, right? I mean, you got to have anchors to build around. But the 3 most important things to me that may not be the most obvious, right? I tried to think about this and not take the lowest of hanging fruit. But one is, I know it's a philosophy at Marty Herney's, and I totally agree with it, is you got to keep your strengths strong. You can't ignore a position group just because you have some real strength there, because one injury goes away or happens, your strength and your identity there goes away. I mean, the Panthers are known for having a ferocious front 7 and a solid running game, right? So you've got to keep that intact. And he did that by going out and signing Dontari Poe. So keeping your strength strong is one thing that I really believe in, that I know Marty Herney does. The second thing is I believe you need to have a very balanced approach. You need to look at how much you're spending on offense and how much you're spending on defense. You can't get out of whack and have 70% of your salary spent on one side of the ball. I think you've got to be as balanced as possible, so you got to keep an eye on that. Third thing that I always believe in is you got to find some guys that are cheap. You have to find these unrestricted free agents, the Andrew Norwells. I think I was not a very big Dave Gettleman fan at all, but finding folks like Norwell, big feather in his cap. Also finding folks, cheap free agents like Kurt Coleman on his first contract here was a cheap signing, and getting some of these folks to come in and play at a very low level and be starters and contributors helps you afford to keep your stars intact. So you have to do those.
Interject on that and ask you one question about the Dave Gettleman part. Is he, we praised him so much for being able to go find those cheap guys, right? That he did it in 2013 where we made the playoffs. He did it again in 2015. He seemed like that was what we always clapped about, right? Like he can miss on 3 rounds of the draft, but he got Norwell.
That came back and blew him up at the end. Right. Missing in the draft.
Maybe, and this is just from one guy. I just it takes one to know one. Maybe he's just cheap. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? He's just cheap with everybody. And so, anybody who hits, you're like, well, he hit a cheap one. Well, it just depends.
Yeah, okay. I mean, he signed 10 cheap ones and one of them hit. Right?
I'm just kidding. I'm just
well, hey,
I'm a miser. Mel always picks on me for being cheap.
Yeah, I was going to say, if any of you guys out there know Tony, he is cheap. If nothing else, the man is cheap.
He said you didn't even sugarcoat it, dude. If you know Tony, you know he is cheap.
That's true. Tony is a good dude, and he is cheap. There's 2 adjectives I describe Tony.
But every time we order 2 beers at the bar, you get the pause. Who's buying these? Nah, I'm just kidding. By the way, I'm still not drinking. I can't wait for next Tuesday where I can drink.
Oh, snap. I hear you.
All right, so you had this. Where keep your strength strong, balance, and you got to land. You got to kind of hit.
Find some cheap. You got to find some cheap.
You got to hit on something. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. All right, I was thinking about this. holistically, I think some things to keep in mind to filling out a strong roster was honest competitiveness. And what I mean is that, like we always hear, you got to have competition. You got to have competition.
It's got to be a real competition.
Yeah, is that I think that we have to add one layer to that and say that it is a real competition, and that those guys, it is putting the best player out there every week. Now, I know that there's certain guys and things that are kind of just locked in, but I want to make sure that that competition isn't fraudulent, because I think the players know that as well. And that means, too, that you can't – this goes to my next point, which I wrote competency. I think this is that I was looking at somebody was talking about what players could be. I forget. I think it was Jordan Rodriguez or something. And they were like, we need this. And this person, we don't think he can be more than this. And I was just thinking, we need all of our players to be pretty good. You know, I mean, we have to be competent at all positions. And that competency has to stem behind the starter as well. And what happens when something goes wrong? Do you have a player behind you who is competent, who can at least go out there and not spoil the whole damn production?
So you're saying you don't want to have to roll Nate Chandler out at left tackle?
Right. Yeah, and
right.
I think, too, is that I think like someone like Searcy is kind of like this, is what if Searcy doesn't – so what if we don't – I mean, if he doesn't start? Say we land the –
Still important, yeah.
A star.
I mean, yeah.
I want our guys that are in supportive roles to not be trash.
Right.
And that goes to that.
Depth.
They have
Good
to, yeah.
point.
And then the last one is this, is that I think that your team has to have some balance and versatility so you can be flexible. I feel like is that I understand that it's all a house of cards and one card out of whack can throw the whole thing out. But there's no sense in building that house of cards to make any one wing of it like, oh, let's just make this dangly card for the fun of it. You need to be flexible enough for when things go wrong, when they go wrong with injury, when the draft doesn't go as planned.
Right.
When anything comes out of the blue, you can't have a team that has no wide receivers, and then the one wide receiver gets an injury, and then you go, you know what, we got to build for next year. Like, you cannot be that fragile, and that requires flexibility going in the draft, flexibility in training camp, and flexibility throughout the season. So those are my 3 things that I think are important for roster management or roster composition. Mel, let's jump in here. We're going to move the cat calls up this week. The number is 252-228-5098, and we're going to see how this goes. We'll get your feedback if you guys like them earlier in the show. Let us know if you like them towards the end, because we're going to keep coming back after the calls. We got more to talk about, and we'll see where they take us. But we're going to jump into these cat calls. You can reach the cat call line at 252-228-5098.
So what are your thoughts on catcalling?
Yeah, it's pretty. You shouldn't do that to somebody.
And how did that make you feel?
Very uncomfortable.
So how do you think catcalling makes the person feel?
It feels good, like.
Who's that cat sitting in the back corner with his face buried in the snow? Who's that kid that can use one?
Yeah, boy, it's your boy Jay Cryer coming from Bristol, England tonight because I'm at my university. Start off by saying I'm sorry to my C3 boys. I haven't been in touch recently. I've had a busy few months. I'd have actually been on a show 2 weeks ago if the professor hadn't forgot to play my message. So I took time.
True.
But yeah, moving on. Had a good off season. I feel like we've set ourselves up. We've got some good pieces in some vital places. I was gutted about Breland, but it's nice to see that we've managed to get ourselves a young and promising cornerback to go alongside Bradbury. Ready for the draft, best player available. I think we've set ourselves up well. Talking of the draft, I am so excited for the C3 draft party. I think this will be my 4th year involved. I cannot wait. Favourite time of the year. Cannot wait to catch up with you boys. It's going to be a late one, but I'll be getting on the beers and I'm going to have a brilliant time with you boys. And yeah, so hope everyone's well and just keep pounding, baby.
All right, yeah, boy. That's Jay Cryer. Jay Cryer shouting out the C3 draft party, which
follow him on Twitter, guys, at @YeahBoy.
Yeah,
and he is a great follow. He's a good, strong Panther fan across the pond. He's been, I mean, what's it like 3 in the morning when the draft is going on? He is up, hanging out and chilling.
Poor guy has to stay up till all night to go on the draft party with us, and he will. He's done it. Like you said, this will be the 4th year. Jay Cryer, you know what he did? He mentioned that we were positioned well for the draft. Goes back to a couple of things we were talking about with that roster management. Not every signing has to be a signing that you think is going to transform a roster forever. Sometimes it needs to prop up the things that you're already doing, like he said. All right, Mel, here we go.
Well, hang on. I was just going to say it was exactly to your point earlier about having depth, because you can have an all-star roster, but it's a 16-game season. Usually the team that stays the healthiest wins the most. And you look at the Super Bowl champs last year, the Philadelphia Eagles, they lost 5 all-pro caliber players. They had depth. So these free agent signings, like you say, they don't have to all be all-stars, but they all have to be competent and have good, strong depth that can be there in case that all-star that you get in the draft goes down to injury.
Amen. All right, here we go.
Baby.
Yeah, my name is Keith. I'm a Panthers fan here in California. I watch the podcast sometimes, so I can't find any better Carolina podcast. I don't know. I mean, there may be other ones. Maybe I'll just start looking. But I watch you guys' podcast.
All right.
You know, a few things I don't see you guys talking about, you know, and so at the point it's starting to piss me off, you know. We need to talk about specifically what we need to do to address the wide receiver position. I know we've got a couple of, free agents in, but we need to be talking about who we should draft and do a show about where our draft picks are and what we would like to see for these draft picks to get taken. And then, obviously comparing and contrasting to previous seasons, looking at where we're our weakest points, and then putting the show together, kind of what we need a couple of days before the draft. Something like that, man. I've been watching all your guys' videos, but if you guys don't do that show, I'm not going to watch it anymore. Because I'll talk, look, let's see this guy right now. Look.
All right, he trailed off on his own. All right. Well, let me tell you this, is that let's talk about where we need to draft a wide receiver. It's not at 24. Like, let's stop freaking out about this wide receiver thing being the end-all, be-all of all things Carolina Panthers. Right now, there's no great, phenomenal receivers in this draft. You're going to look at, we're meeting with Shark. We're meeting with Cortland. I'm sure we're going to meet with Sutton. But I don't think any of these guys are going to come in and do all that much right off the bat. I mean, they may be pretty good, but think about the 4 receivers taken in the top 10 last year. I don't think any of them did anything. And, yeah, they were dealing with injuries. They're dealing with all these different things. But I would say that class of receivers, Corey Davis, John Ross, who's the dude? Wallace?
Yeah, you had Mike Williams out of Clemson.
Williams,
right?
Yeah. Is that all those guys were, I think, head and shoulders above the players that are in this draft at wide receiver. So I'm not really going to speculate too far beyond round 1. I think that round 1 is already hard enough to kind of gauge what we're going to do. Do we think we're going to get somebody? Yeah. But we will do some draft preparation. In fact, we usually break down, or we're trying to go, a couple of weeks ago, we did a couple of position groups. We're going to talk a little bit about running backs a little bit later on in the show. We got the draft show later on. And you should listen to the podcast because here, it is pretty fun. A, and B, we do, like you said, we keep doing it, man. We keep doing it. So we'll keep that in mind going forward. Appreciate the call. Appreciate the watch. And maybe you'll find out if we do talk about receivers later.
And let's take just a second. I think we got a few minutes here. Let's talk a little bit about the wide receivers.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a good point.
I want to mention one more thing about the call, though. And that is when you say you're not going to watch until we do something, when people say those things, how do they know when you do it? Isn't that really just saying you're not going to watch anymore? All right, semantics. All right, go ahead. Tell me about these.
Hey, we appreciate the call, right? I
do. I do.
But don't just be the complainer. Like I always tell my employees at times, I'm like, don't tell me it's raining. Bring me a freaking umbrella, baby. Right?
He did say some nice things at the beginning and gave us a show outline. So, Mel, take it home.
That's a little bit of an umbrella there. But what I'm saying is Carolina Cat Chronicles is also the voice of Panther Nation. So keep calling in. Let your voice be heard.
Word.
Feel free to write an article. Send it in to us. We'll get you cleaned up and published and put out there so you can be a part of all of this. You can come on the draft show. You can talk about these things. That's what this is all about. But I appreciate the topic about wide receivers because I do think we do need to make sure that we keep adding to Cam's weaponry. We need to make sure we add to that through the draft. Does that mean we take somebody at 24? I'm not going to say definitely yes or definitely no. I'm going to say the value has to be there. I personally, if Calvin Ridley does fall, you best believe I'm taking him at 24.
Oh, gosh.
All right, so he is. You best believe I'm taking him at 24 if he falls. There's other guys that I would like to see there in round 2. Somebody like DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, these types of guys that can make a big difference. And then you got other guys down in round 3 like Deshaun Hamilton out of Penn State, who I think could be a very underrated name on the board. So I think there's potential in this draft, but like Tony said, there's a lot of players. See, that's a mistake that teams make is they go draft a receiver because they need a receiver at the first round. Well, you're reaching, and the guy doesn't necessarily justify being there at that position or at that point on the board, and he can't live up to the hype. I mean, you had guys going in the top 5, top 10 last year at wide receiver. They had no business going that high. They should have been in the low 20s and into the second round. So we can't make that mistake. We can't go and grab a guy at 24 just because we have him. Like, to me, there's only 2 backs that should go in the first round at running back.
All right. Yeah. So here's a couple of things in the chat room about a wide receiver. Samuel is not healthy again from Slim J. False, Slim J. Slim J always got all the facts, but you know where his faults is he was never returned to healthy. So he's not healthy again. He's still not healthy. But
he should be by the season. But
I did hear Ron Rivera talk about it at the owners meeting, and he just said that they're rehabbing. He's running straight line stuff, no cuts, but he's going to be a training camp guy. So you do got to worry about that. I do think that raises some questions.
I think you got to add to that. We've added some nice, and you think about it too. I want to make a point that the Super Bowl champs last year, who were their 2 starting wide receivers? Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith. That is not that big of a difference from a healthy Devin Funchess and Torrey Smith. It's really not that big of a difference. You add a nice rookie into that rotation, and you might have something.
Well, the other thing is that I think it was Tim Tizzy said that's why Mel is not a GM about the Ridley comment.
Oh, dude, 24? Are you kidding me?
In Mel's defense, if you would have followed him over the last couple of years, we probably would have been in better shape than we are now. Or at least there's an argument there. But I'm with you, Tim Tizzy. I'm with you. I don't want Ridley. I don't want a wide receiver, period, in the first. I don't think they change your team enough. And I don't think that there is an A.J. Green type receiver in this draft, or at least in that first round that you know about. So why would you want to? I would rather get a wide receiver I think is pretty good, who is just pretty good, like the one who is at 24. That's just my kind of opinion. I do think that you're going to need to consider that Samuel is hurt, right? You can't count him in. But look at this. You gave a second round, a high pick, too, in the second round. And you went and got Curtis Samuel. And even if he was healthy, how much does it really truly change your team in the first year? I don't know.
Well, he really was making a difference before he got hurt. When he started coming on there towards the end, he was making that offense pretty dynamic. But got hurt. All
right, well, we got plenty more to talk about. How about this? I'll talk about the draft, but I don't want to talk about wide receivers because I feel like, we used to talk at these same things about the draft and with guys like Devin Smith. There's been hundreds of names of people who looked awesome at wide receiver who are nobodies in the league that we thought. And so I'm nervous. Maybe I just think of them all like USC receivers. But
I think you have to address it. You've got to get back. We've not had a good complementary set of receivers. The caller has a great point.
Ever.
Well,
no,
since
Moose.
Since Moose and Smitty, right? And
we
got to
say
get
this
back.
every week, too.
Yeah.
We say this every week, too. For the last, we'll be saying it forever. All right, let's keep going with these calls.
We got to be in Indeed after he played left tackle. He's probably going to be left guard. How does the guy know that? He doesn't know that. He's going to play left tackle. Come on, guys.
Oh, he's back.
Hey, guys. This is Maurice Carter out of Andrew. I was calling about
I hope I didn't mess the calls
safety and cornerback problem that we're finding ourselves in now that Breland's contract has been rescinded. I don't really think it's a problem because we got Poe, we got KK in the middle, and then we got Addison and Pep on the edge. And when you can press with 4 or 5 up front, and then we got that tremendous 3 in the back. We really don't have to worry about safety or cornerbacks being top notch. I think the pressure will suffice. I think we'll be okay. Also, just wanted to mention one other player. I think his name was Shark.
DJ Shark.
4.38 in the combine. He looks like a pretty good wide receiver, and if he's there in the third round, I think we need to get him with a comp pick. What do you guys think?
Okay.
All right. Keep pounding.
You're right about this. Is that your secondary doesn't have to be completely shut down. You can if you get 60 sacks like we did in 2013, right? Is that getting pressure up the middle always and off the edge, getting after quarterback is the best way to defend wide receivers down the field and stop big plays generally because they don't have time for them to develop. So I think you're onto a lot there with number one. I've been saying this over and over, probably here on the show too, is that this post signing, don't sleep on this. This is like one of the best signings in free agency this offseason when you think about the money that was given, the quality of player, the age. I think it's going to be phenomenal. You pair him with KK for the next 3 years. That middle's looking great. Addison, we see him continuing. I think you get a couple years out of him. On the other side, I do think that there's some issues with Peppers, and not that. Look, he had 10.5 sacks. I get it. I love Pep. I do think that you're going to need somebody that's not going to make Pep be a every down.
But you know what? That's a good time to bring up. I think it was Carlton, and I'm sorry if I got the name wrong in the YouTube chat room. That was talking about the emergence of Wes Horton. I think Horton and Pep is a very solid combination because Horton is great at setting the edge. He's a very good run setter. So he's a very good first and second down defensive end. And he picked up some sacks last year. So he's a player on the rise. But you pair him and then you bring Pep in behind him. That's a good combination.
And then we're all waiting on Deshaun Hall. He was Ron Rivera was talking about how he was going to need to step up this year. You know, you hate to be on Ron Rivera's radar as a second-year player already at this point in the season, being called out like that.
But you know what? Another player he did that to early in his career was Josh Norman. And you see how that brought him along eventually.
Yeah, but Deshaun was hurt. So I don't know what, I don't know how you can display what you're giving. I mean, I felt like Norman was.
Maybe he sees, they see a lot of things we don't see, how they are in the meeting rooms and rehab and everything else.
Or maybe you just got to say, that's your way of saying young player, he's going to have to learn quickly. I do think that I would caution that better not be the plan by the Carolina Panthers. I think that's why you mentioned Horton being so important. I know everybody's going to be like, well, Horton, come on, man. How can a guy that be that important? I tell you one thing is that if you don't have him.
That's the confidence you're talking about.
And you've got Deshaun Hall there. Like, Deshaun Hall's not going to be good this year, folks. And if he is, that's going to be the most phenomenal story ever, because we know that defensive ends take longer to develop in the league unless you're just like the top Julius Peppers, Clowney type material.
Joey Bosa.
Yeah. I mean, even if you look at Vic Beasley, you know what I'm saying? These guys
took a few years, yeah.
2 years.
It takes a while.
And now you're talking about a guy who's not that caliber, who has some of the physical measurements of a guy that could be that. But then you also say that he's basically he's a rookie. So it's not like he is a second-year player. He's a first-year player coming off an injury right now. So I think you have to have limited optimism or at least have reasonable expectations. And I hope that you don't put him in a place that he can't meet the expectations as it is.
You're right. And look for the Panthers to add a defensive end to the mix during the draft this week, too. A name to keep an eye on is Chad Thomas. Is a big boy who's come in and visited the Panthers. I think he's 6'6", 275. Big dude. So keep an eye on him, maybe somewhere right around the third-round mark, too.
All right, here we go. And then there was one other component with the call that was about I think he may have made that call before, too, that we went out and got Cockrell and Searcy. So at the same time, that's another reason you don't need necessarily shut down names, but you get competent players, as we mentioned earlier.
Maurice Carter again. One more thing I wanted to add, guys. I don't know if we're allowed to do this, but can we ice up the president for the $130,000 paid to Stormy? I don't know. Maybe we should maybe overlook that, but it just seems kind of ironic that some people get censured, some people get impeached, and others get a pass. I don't know. Keep pounding, guys.
Yeah,
or like Stormy Daniels said, keep spanking.
Shush. Here, let's tie that call because to the Carolina Panthers, and I think we can. Can we find a way to maneuver and thread the Stormy Daniels needle through a pair of jeans and to a Carolina Panthers discussion? And I will say,
a bad joke in there somewhere. Man.
Yes, I'm gonna say this is that when it comes to some people getting a pass, some people not.
That's a great point.
Cam Newton
made a Teflon. Yeah.
Cam Newton never gets a pass. Right. So this is I don't know. It's an interesting thing. What is the psychology of people who get multiple chances, and then the other where we have zero zero room.
Did you see the video this past week of Ron Gronkowski up on stage acting an
humping,
absolute fool? I mean, if that were Cam Newton, it would be on the national news.
Yeah, it's not and I do believe that race in America is a real issue that we have to talk about and not avoid. But I think even at not a lower point, but deeper, is that it's just something about personality. Mm-hmm. Maybe it says a lot. It has something to do with our culture or whatever. But some people were just like, hey, it's just a goofy guy, right, doing this. And then the other one, we come after. Yeah. And I will say Stormy Daniels is probably the best thing. I'm like, I know that we're knocking the president for these things, but like, I mean, this is probably the best things he's done. Literally. Sorry. All right.
Different show. Different show.
What's up, everybody? This is the Handsome G off of Twitter. Quick question. Knowing Marty Herney's reputation in the past, do you feel that he would move up in the draft to grab a player? Hopefully he will not do this, but do you think he will sacrifice next year's first rounder to move up? I love the show. You guys are the best. Thanks for the call.
All right. Mel?
Great call.
I think another thing I wanted to talk about today that this call can bring us in. What if we just, instead of trading the pick up, what if we traded it for Odell Beckham Jr.?
You light this nation on fire, man.
Think about this, though. Is that unrealistic? First of all, would Dave Gettleman take a number 24 overall pick for Odell Beckham Jr.?
Word on the street is he's seriously considering, or at least is considering and talking to the Rams for the 23rd pick for him. So right in that range, yes. But the other side to it is, what would we give up to afford him? Because you're going to have to sign. He's wanting a $20 million type of contract. I understand.
He's
wanting QB. He's wanting QB money. So you're going to have to. You would immediately have to cut Ryan Khalil, which a lot of people might say, okay, good. All right, so you immediately have to cut him. You might even have to go so far as to cut somebody else that really hurts, somebody like a Thomas Davis that you don't want to do. But when you're talking about having to get to $20 million, I mean, maybe you could make it work for a year, but the point is you're going to have to hurt to get there. And, boy, how appealing would that be, though, Cam Newton and Odell Beckham Jr. Boy, that would be a Madden squad.
All right, so let me
say
I do want to talk because I think to answer the caller's question is that I don't see us. It just depends. I don't know if there's a player in this draft outside of.
Well, it depends on who falls. It depends on who falls, right? I mean, if somebody who is projected to go in the top 10,
give me a name other than Saquon Barkley.
Well, I mean, you've got.
You trade up for Minka?
Well, yeah. I mean, if Minka made it down to 12, 14, 15, I can't even think, what's the Florida State safety's name? I know everybody knows it right off the top of their head.
Derwin James or something?
Derwin James. Yeah. I mean, if he's there at 15 and 16. I mean, but my thought, to answer the caller's question, my thought is I don't think Herney will trade next year's number one because he is very mindful that there's a new ownership coming in. And he's going to have to show some real competence.
Sure, but I would say this, is that why, wouldn't this make, is that if then the only problem with trading for Odell would be the money. That would be the only thing that could concern you, because if you're going to trade up back,
you give up a 24 pick for that caliber of talent. I mean, all day.
I would do that every day. I would have picked him at 24 in the draft that year. I would pick him 24 in the draft this year. Now, some people said, look at he's coming off an injury. He's kind of a little Looney Tunes. At the same time, I think there's the uncertainty surrounding Odell Beckham Jr., even with all of that, is less
He's worth the risk, in my opinion.
All of those other dudes who you mentioned, who who would pale in comparison.
It's a whole other show and a whole other conversation. Does he justify $20 million? I don't.
Okay, but to go back, I did want to mention this is because Odell Beckham Jr. has said that he is willing to not forego the seat, like he won't go out on the field without a deal. And I want to say, and I don't have it up, I wanted to put it up, I want to read it to you guys. I put out a moment on Twitter. I'm going to try to do this when I can for the shows. And that is a Twitter moment. I tweeted out, and just like the things that we're going to be talking about in that show that week, and some of the things we're going to be featuring, kind of like an agenda of what we're going to be discussing. And I came up and I saw this. Was a tweet from, this was from our good friend Pat Coltrane. Pat Coltrane has got his own podcast he's starting up right now, and he's also been doing YouTube videos. He said this. He was talking about Dave Gettleman, and if you look at what is going on with Dave Gettleman in the media, Joe Person said this. He said, he tweeted out, Dave Gettleman says he feels bad for what happened in Carolina because any team sale is hard. It's topsy-turvy. And so Jaron Honeycutt, he said, tell him we don't need his sympathy. We feel the hern. And to talk about topsy-turvy is that you got your own topsy-turviness. And then Jeff Schwartz was commenting on this Odell Beckham Jr. thing. And he was saying, look, is that this is like Odell says he's going to sit out. I'm just going to watch this. And Pat Coltrane comes in there talking about how Dave Gettleman with Odell Beckham Jr. And so Giants GM, our former GM, Dave Gettleman, we know he is a master with words, dude. He is the cleverest of them all. And yeah, he can just get it done. This is what Ralph Vacciano said. He's from Sporting News New York or something like that. He said, Giants GM Dave Gettleman on the video of Odell Beckham in bed with a model, a pepperoni pizza, and maybe drugs. And this is quote from Dave Gettleman. All I saw was the pizza. Look at me. All he saw was that pizza looking at him. He didn't see anything else. And this is what Pat Coltrane said. You can find Pat at Pat Coltrane on Twitter. He said, everybody saw that cocaine. And DG says all he saw was pizza. Only gangsters talk like that. You know, and that's the truth. Is like, I just saw pizza. Like Dave Gettleman, I would say this is Odell Beckham Jr. I don't think you're going to be able to push. Dave Gettleman seems like a guy who doesn't want to do. He wants to tell people what the contract's going to be. And Odell, you're going to get traded, bro.
I think it was Ian Rappaport. Or Gettleman says you can't replace talent. Yeah, tell Steve Smith that. Tell Josh Norman.
Well, he was in the back end of his career. Odell's at a different level than Josh Norman. He's at a different level than where Steve Smith was.
My point is he's not above being traded by Gettleman.
Yeah, I just don't think this is that. And I don't think he's above it. I just think that Dave Gettleman ain't going to pay nobody that kind of money. What we say? If you know anything about him, he's cheap.
He's cheap.
He's cheap.
That's right.
All right, here we go going. Let's get on. We still got more calls.
C3, Chicago kid, stuck in traffic, like always. But I just want to tell you, being stuck in traffic, this is really helpful. I admire the verity of the program. We got troll dicks or internet troll dicks. We got naked men kicking windows. We got golf carts going mad and hitting people's ankles. We got, people doing terrible at the combine. I enjoy the verity. And I'm a bit of a sesquipedalian myself. I appreciate, Professor, your vernacular, even if
look at this.
People like to use the word variety, but what do they know? My question is...
He likes our variance-ness.
I don't have my resources in front of me, obviously, but who do we have in the draft that are local boys? Clemson, Carolina, North Carolina, Duke, Georgia. Someone, a couple around the area that we'd really like to look at in the areas that we need. Safeties, maybe wide receiver, running back, that kind of thing. So I wanted your opinion on that.
Backyard baller.
Outside of that, screw anybody who's being a jerk, because jerks are jerks.
They are jerks.
So appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. What a good call that one was. Mel, who are some backyard ballers The ones that I know about, the one I know closest to here is at your alma mater, and there's no way he's going to be going to the Carolina Panthers. That's Bradley Chubb, right?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Nick Chubb is from his family, the Chubbs, like historically are from North Carolina.
He's from Chubbville, Georgia.
Yeah, but they migrated from North Carolina to and founded their own town, right?
Right.
Who's somebody? You got any other backyard ballers that we should be looking into?
Well, you got Reed from Wake Forest. I mean, that's a safety that could be in consideration there at 24 for sure. Yeah,
What's
and you
his
got
first name? I'll look it up.
See, I want to call him Eric because he's a safety, and I know people in the chat room got it right off the top of their head.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. Keep going.
All right. Well, then you got Samuels at running back for my boys at NC State, right? So we should do a whole show on that. But you also got you've got a nice cornerback that's going to be going in the second round that actually played for Louisville this past year that went to a Charlotte high school. Can't even think of his name right now.
Is his name Travion Red? No.
No.
Okay.
No, but you just look at the top safeties in the NFL draft.
All right, I'll look that up. Top safeties.
Top safeties, NFL draft. That's right. He's in the top, probably the third rated safety in the draft, right behind Derwin James.
All right.
Out of Wake Forest.
So here are the top three from Walter Football: Minka Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, Ronnie Harrison, Justin Reed is Stanford.
Totally blew that one then. Who's the
His
Wake
name
Forest?
is Jesse Bates, which,
Bates.
Slim J and
Sorry.
all them were all over. You were right about that. You were right about that.
All you had to do is jump in the YouTube chat.
Jesse Bates is a name at safety.
See, that's why we need you guys. That's why we need
And
you
isn't
fellas.
there, where is DJ Moore play at?
Maryland.
That's not, former ACC team.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Great call. Great call. I think we got more.
What up, Season the Third, YouTube, everybody, it's your boy Jada. I'm really sorry if I sound under the weather because I am. And under the foot of snow we got this weekend. But anyway, I just wanted to ask a question, but I have to lead up to it. So I would say that I know we still have the draft left, but overall with free agency, this roster looks worse than last year. I believe it's gotten a little better in the wide receiver, slightly better at D-tackle. But running back, tight end, guard are all down. Corner, safety are all down from last year. Even some of the depth was lost. So overall, I see this roster as worse. I know we still have free agency. Cam has to learn a new system this year on offense, which is going to cause a little problems. But there's two things that I think make a top-tier franchise: a Lombardi Trophy and continued success and relevance. And that second one is the one I hope we can finally buck, because we have a thing that I call the Carolina curse, that I started calling that since 2004, is that this franchise cannot win back-to-back winning seasons.
It hasn't done it yet.
In 22 years. And it's frustrating because I'm so aware of this that I just have trouble having hope every other year.
This is the year, though, baby.
The 6-10 after the Super Bowl year, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I know we saw free agency. Do you think there's any way that we can get that monkey off our back at least, and somehow, some way, get 2 winning seasons in a row in our 23rd season of existence? Because to me, this is the biggest blight and one of the biggest blemishes and one of my biggest pet peeves about being a Carolina Panthers fan, is that every other year I just know better. I get up false hope and I just know better, because we have never, ever won back-to-back winning seasons ever, and I just would love it to end. I just wanted to know your guys' opinions and see if you guys think we have hope this year or not. I know you always need to have hope, but for me, it's always hurt me. So hopefully we'll see you guys tonight on the podcast. If not, it's because I'm sick. So you guys have a good one and keep pounding.
All right, man. We hope, J-Dub, we hope you get to feeling better. I do think you bring up a fantastic point in that consistency of winning or consistency of success and consistent competitors, and beyond just we're getting to the wild card, we're in the hunt every year and we make it to the playoffs, but you got to have a run. You've got to build momentum. And I felt like we were starting to do that once we got to the Super Bowl, is that you look like a team that was getting better and better, and then you see how far they can fall, and you want relevance. You want your team to be relevant, and it's important for a fan base. And from a fan of a college football team right now who has gone from consistently being relevant for a small school to now in the dumps for the last 2 years, those programs, when you don't have the history, like you said, of a Lombardi or that long history of a organization that just, I mean, even if you look at the Browns, I mean, in theory, there's like a little bit deeper of, even though there's all the movement and stuff, I guess. I'm trying to think of poor teams that have enough history to cope with those years that they're poor. And I don't think that the Panthers are truly there yet. So you need to either make that history or be relevant. And the Lombardi is the step, right? That's the one. It's the one that will firmly plant a fan base for a generations, like 3 generations you can remedy at that moment. Mel, so that's my take, that either history or relevance, time to make some history.
Yeah, and that's one of the more perplexing statistics. It just blows my mind that the Panthers have never had back-to-back winning seasons.
It's crazy.
And that
with all the success they've had, if you think about it, they've had a lot of success as a young team.
Well, name me another team that has won their division 3 years in a row, yet has never had 2 winning seasons back to back. That is crazy. That really is. But I will disagree with him on the point about the roster being worse, because, and maybe it's optimism, but I think Poe is an upgrade over Starr.
I agree.
I think that Cockrell is an upgrade over Worley.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be adding more to the safety, and it's not even a finished product yet. But our wide receiver core right now is better than at least our wide receiver core was at the end of last year. Maybe not in training camp, but at the end of last year when we were rolling out people off the street. I mean, I think our overall roster right now, the only position that I don't think we're as good at is the Norwell spot. But I don't think we're a finished product yet.
Right.
So – yeah. So I think this is going to be the year, but something that has historically bitten us is health.
What's crazy is that I think that goes that's a testament to how we overperformed our roster last year.
Yeah, it really is.
We outperformed the players we had on the team, I think.
Yeah, people dabble the Panthers.
You got 10.5 sacks out of Julius Peppers. Like, that's I don't care what anybody says, is that we thought he was going to be good. I said, yeah, this dude's going to come in here and he ain't going to, this ain't just a, see you later year for him, is that he's so freakishly dominant that he's going to be great in that capacity. But, I mean, 10.5 sacks, like, dude's like going to go sign a 4-year deal right now with that type of season in theory. So I do think this is that a lot of people are going to say, this is one of the things I want to talk about over the course of the week, and we're going to come back to this next week, Mel, but just I want you to think about this for next week. Julius Peppers signing with the Carolina Panthers this year for one more season, maybe it tells you something about his relationship with Marty Herney. And that, talk about, I was thinking about this with the Odell stuff came about and things, is that Dave Gettleman burned bridges. Like, burned them to the ground type bridges. Herney, like you always talk about this, is that the reason that you were kind of, you went cold on Peppers is because Herney offered him a giant deal and he still didn't take it. But if you think about it, that must have said that Peppers could have retired this year. He didn't sign for any money. He took a cheap deal with us. I think that probably tells you it's a testament to Marty Herney's ability, or at least how he's dealt with Peppers in the past. If they had a really poor relationship, he wouldn't have done that.
And another relationship I think is key in all of this is the defensive coordinator, who was his defensive line coach, who he's very close to in Washington. You know, I think he's excited about the concept of coming back and playing for him. And I think he likes the idea of putting a final stamp in Carolina. You're right, he could have walked away this past year. And if Marty Herney had burned him to the ground about walking away, like perhaps I would have, then he probably never would have come back. So you're right. I agree with you.
All right, I think that's it. Let me see if there's one more call.
Hi, what's up, Cat Chronicles? This is Claudie. I am back. I took a hiatus from the calls last week, but I was still in the chat room.
Welcome back.
I hate to tell you this. I hate to tell you that is unfortunately it didn't record, so he's only partially back.
Oh,
right, so
well,
all right, that's the cat
next
calls
week,
line. The cat calls line. The number's 252-228-5098. That's
Took over the show tonight.
228-5098. I do have a few last things I want to plow through. We mentioned Samuel already. We got that. All right, let's get to this. I'm wearing the Shaq Thompson jersey because the Panthers plan to pick up. It's been Joe Person reported the Panthers plan to pick up the 5th-year option on Shaq Thompson's rookie deal for 2019. We're talking about next year, not this season. I think that this is a logical course. I mean, obviously, I don't think the Panthers would say, no, we're not in this case. But look, this is Thomas Davis's farewell tour, right? This is exactly while we thought Shaq Thompson was going to be a contributor much earlier, is that maybe this is a Shaq Thompson. I mean, he's going to be in a contract year, and it's going to be the first time he gets that kind of the position to himself, pending or barring any setbacks with an injury or something this year for somebody else in front of him.
Do not be surprised, people, if Marty Herney goes out and drafts a linebacker in the top 3 rounds.
God.
You know, and it would not be a dumb idea because Thomas Davis is moving on, and you got
Kuechly is not young. I mean, he's not old, but he's not 3 years.
But you got to protect yourself. You got to protect yourself against not being able to re-sign Shaq Thompson long term, right? I mean, that's something he's always done. You keep your strength strong, and he's always drafted a position where next year would be somebody in the final year of their position. Much like Devin Funchess is going into the final year, look for him to address wide receiver and do the same thing at linebacker.
Let's talk about this. The Daryl Worley saga continues. Is that Daryl Worley? You want to talk about a guy that is divisive? You know what I'm saying? Like where you're an either or guy. Like so now you got a contingent of people talking about how much potential Daryl Worley had as a player, and he is an example of why this staff is not good at developing players, which I think is an interesting conversation to have about how staffs do with player development. I do think that that's a worthy conversation to have, and Worley could be an important component of that. But the reason that this story has come to light, and I've been hard on Worley the whole time from the very beginning. The reason the saga continues is because Ron Rivera mentioned him in the owners' meetings after, in these kind of little interviews he's doing with the Observer and things afterwards. And he was asked about Worley and, kind of trading and giving up and why they decided to part ways. He said this, quote, "When you go back and look at what was happening, I don't think Daryl was taking the next step in our situation instead of circumstances. And we felt that giving him a chance to go somewhere else and grow would be better for him." When asked to expand on this, on his position on that, he just said what he meant by he didn't take the next step. I think they were trying to get a little bit more out of him about, what does that truly mean? He said, quote, "I just thought he didn't grow the way we were expecting, and maybe a change might be good for him." So this is a little. There's a lot to this, obviously, and and it comes to this is that your talent has to outweigh all the mess. That's the key. Is that you want to talk about why Dave Gettleman only saw pizza? Because we're talking about Odell Beckham Jr.
That's exactly right.
Is that like here? Is that you can say he's a scapegoat? I don't know what you're going to say. Is Ron Rivera? I do think it's good that they decided to go a different way, and also this is the third year for Worley in his contract. I think he was a third. That's the last year of his contract, so he's basically going to be a free agent after this season. Maybe this is a way of you guys parting on semi-cordial terms in some ways. This goes on to another discussion I meant to tell you that Bené Ben-Wickery, Mel, I don't know if you heard this. He's a patsy. He's a patsy, man. He's a patsy. He's a fall guy. He is signed with Arizona Cardinals. He's reuniting with Steve Wilkes. And this comes to show, to me, this is full-on confirmation that he was a patsy while he was here in Carolina, and he was cut after that Atlanta Falcons game as a measure of Dave Gettleman saving face after all those things he was doing and going away from Josh Norman. They put up 517 yards. Bené Ben-Wickery got torched for something like to the tune of 225 yards in that game.
And he wasn't even healthy that game.
Right. But he was running, right? I mean, so it wasn't like, he was healthy enough to put on the helmet. I get that. But I go back to this. We've been saying it. We've been saying it for years now. Full disclosure, fans of Sticky Wiki, because he came on the podcast, 1. 2, he had a great rookie season. And he seemed like always a super cool dude to us. So no need to dislike him. For us, we had a reason to root for him. But then you go and see this, is that, first of all, Bené Ben-Wickery, in a second-year player, I think he was a third-year player that year, he should never be one-on-one with Julio ever. Ever. Not even one play. Let alone enough plays where he could rack up 225 yards. So I think there's something on the coaching staff right there to putting Ben-Wickery in a place where he could not succeed under the best of circumstances.
You shouldn't even put Josh Norman one-on-one with Julio Jones.
Yeah, is that Julio Jones is going to beat everybody but Patrick Peterson one-on-one.
Right.
That's it. He's going to take Lattimore to the woodshed. He's going to take all of them. At some point. Now, it was really bad. But I think he was a fall guy, and to me, you can go read this article. Bené Ben-Wickery, was he a patsy while in Carolina? The reason that I have is he signed with Arizona under Steve Wilkes. This is something that Sean McDermott did not necessarily endorse at the moment all that much. He kind of distanced, rank and file supported the move, but didn't come out and say. He just said, I got to work with the guys that I got. I'm not interested really talking about it. But Steve Wilkes, the defensive back coach at the time, is head coach of the Arizona Cardinals now. So it can't be personality. And I have a hard time believing it was because of performance-based, because everybody goes, oh, he stunk, Mel. He had the worst game ever. Then bench him. But then to cut him on a Friday, three days before game day, with no answer, and you sign a guy that same day, it's something stank there. And I think that Wilkes saying, he's not saying that Ben-Wickery is going to be good or something. He's just saying doesn't that suggest that he thinks he can work with him?
Mm-hmm. He definitely has some upside and some ability, at least for that competent depth, at the very least.
I just felt like, look, we can talk about him not being what you would talk about the quality of his play, but I'm just going to say this. We all watched that game, and I didn't go, gosh, Ben-Wickery, you got to cut that dude. I felt like you had to cut the whole team that day. Mm-hmm. If that's the thing, is that you cut the whole damn defense.
That was the game where McDermott said he wanted to jump out of the plane on the way home from Atlanta.
Yeah, he was going to cut himself. He was thinking about cutting.
He probably should have.
Yeah.
That was more on coaching. Yeah.
I just felt like that was there was something to it. You can read the article. I put a lot of time into it, and I think I got some is beyond just the opinion of me, and this is my initial reaction. I got some things in there to support, hopefully, what I'm saying. If not, you can be like, most of the internet has told me you're just way off base, which has tended to happen before. All right, last thing we got to talk about before we go, Mel. Good Matt Khalil news. And when have you heard of good Matt Khalil news? Well, when you see his wife, Haley O'Brien, on the cover of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, where Haley, the wife of the star Carolina, well, actually, this is quote from the Charlotte Observer, I think. Maybe, I don't know where I pulled this from. Yeah, is Charlotte Observer, maybe. Nope, I don't know where I got it. Said this, quote, Haley, the wife of star Carolina Panthers left tackle Matt Khalil. Matt Khalil is not a star, folks. Let's just go ahead and put it right now, as he is yet to. He's not a star yet, right? But his wife, Haley O'Brien, which they called her Haley Khalil in the article, which I think she's still kind of O'Brien. She's former Miss Minnesota. This is her, and the figure on this woman is she's got a lot of curves, folks. And I want to say that Matt Khalil has now fleeced Minnesota of all their money, as well as Miss Minnesota and all their women. And now, at least we got this in Carolina. Congratulations, Haley O'Brien. Matt Khalil's best thing he's done in Carolina is had a wife that made the Sports Illustrated cover. Mel, what is your prospects on Matt Khalil going forward? Where do you feel, actually, just quickly?
Football perspective, I think you got to give him a full year coming up. You know, you got him back in North Turner's offense. And he was really good his rookie year. Who I believe North Turner was the offensive coordinator then. So let him be healthy. Let's see how he looks for this next year, and then if he doesn't play well this coming year, you got to look into a new direction.
Tip of the cap to Haley O'Brien, though, for sure. All right, Mel. Let's go ahead and close out the show with our Ice Up picks for the week.
All right.
And I think I've got something here for you. All right, Mel, what do you have for us today?
Well, there were quite a few candidates this week, but I will have to do a tip of the cap to the team that represents the shirt I'm wearing here. You see what I got going on? Okay.
Charlotte Hornets.
Yes, we believe. They tend to believe right now in perpetual mediocrity, which I've been a huge fan of the Hornets, and I think the Panthers are here because of the Hornets. They put Charlotte on the map back in 1988. That was the biggest thing that happened to this city ever, and possibly still is the biggest thing historically that's happened to this town, short of Bank of America putting their headquarters here. But even I, the diehard Panther fan who watched every single game and went out to the Coliseum out on Tavola and watched Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning and Muggsy Bogues and Del Curry and all these guys, fell in love with them and was there for the 7 straight years of sellouts. I've become disinterested in this team. They are perpetually mediocre. And right now, they have 2 4-game winning streaks within the last month. Just enough to put them into 12th place, the last spot out of the playoffs. So they're going to be getting a very terrible pick, while the other 10 miserable teams in the NBA are all tanking and noticeably tanking. We're bringing back starters who have been hurt and injecting them into our starting lineup, like Nate Batum, and we're trying to bring Cody Zeller back in. We're making a mad rush to win every game you can to just get a worse draft pick and to stay mediocre. You work with the system you got. The lottery, the more losses you have, if you're not making the playoffs, is the only shot you got to be irrelevant. Picking 12th, picking 13th in the NBA draft, you're going to suck again next year. And you got all these miserable contracts like Nick Batum's contract, $23 million. Charlotte Hornets, you're looking at a new GM. That GM coming in is going to have his work cut out for him. They've got to break this team down. They've got to start over. What they really got to do, Tony, is they've got to ice up. Ice up.
Well done. All right, my ice up pick this week is going to Daron Harmon, who is safety for the New England Patriots, who is probably the first person in the history of the United States to be arrested for bringing weed to Costa Rica. Bear with me, but here, Daron Harmon got it twisted. He got it twisted about which way the weed is supposed to come from. The weed don't go from the United States to Costa Rica. It comes from Costa Rica to America. But Daron Harmon instead thought that he could carry in a suitcase 58 grams of marijuana inside a can of iced tea. He had 3 pipes with cannabis oil, 1 THC candy, and 4 glass containers with compressed marijuana that weighed 4.3 grams. My man was trying to get on that scientific high. That's what that is. That's where that's what we call, you remember that movie Weird Science? That's what they call weed science right there. I don't know what all that stuff means, but I will tell you what the director of Fiscal Control Police, Irving Mailspin, told the Costa Rica Star was this. This involved a professional NFL player who tried to come into the country carrying marijuana. We sent him back to the U.S. Quote, "It is important to highlight the work of different police bodies who carry out important operations in different areas of the country. We want to prevent undesirable people from entering the country." So, Daron Harmon, you, sir, are getting ice up because you got it twisted, literally. You tried to bring weed the wrong direction. You tried to make Americans immigrating into other countries the undesirables. According to the president, it's the other way around. So you got everything twisted here. To you, sir, I say ice up.
Nice. Well done, Tony.
All right, all that, and that's it, dude. Let me see. I think I got somewhere to get out of here. My name's Tony Dunn. It's the C3 Podcast, brought to you by CarolinaCatChronicles.com, where every Tuesday night we chop up the latest Panthers news and opinions. We do it with all of you in the chat room, all of y'all on Facebook, on Periscope, and all of you that called in. We need you to do us a solid. Subscribe, tell one person about the show, send a tweet, mention somebody in a Facebook post, tell them about the C3 Podcast, bringing it to you each and every week. Mel, tell them real quick where they can hit you up on Twitter.
Catch me at Panthers Drafter anytime on Twitter. Also, new Draft Tech mock draft coming out every Wednesday between now and the draft. Check it out.
Just saw a mock draft somebody sent on Twitter to me that said Calvin Ridley 24 for the Carolina Panthers. Guys, we'll talk about that we'll have to do a whole show on the draft. In fact, we do a live special on the draft, and you can catch all that at CarolinaCatChronicles.com. We'll see you next Tuesday night.